It says I'm live. It took a minute to like load. I don't know. Whatever. I'm here. Hi, everybody. Welcome back for another little installment. We'll be reading from the antidote today. And if I have energy and I'm up for it, there was a video I thought maybe I could react to or watch live. We'll see how much reaction or responding I do to it. But maybe of interest is some looked like an Orthodox priest discussing feminism or something like that. I don't know. It got recommended to me and I was like, oh, this looks intriguing. Very interesting stuff. So yeah, that's what I have for tonight. Give me a sec here and then I'm gonna get into the reading. Some coffee I made earlier. I should have drank it a while ago. It's kind of late, but might as well finish it. Yeah, okay. All right, so we're on chapter 8, I believe. Yeah, and the name of the chapter is The Forbidden Fruit. We stopped mid-chapter last reading. So let's see. A sec, get some water in me, I think, too. I tell you, this hot weather, it takes it out of you. Like, I'm not too badly affected, but I notice I'm a lot more hydration conscious and just a bit more lethargic. But we have a few more days, I think, and then it'll pass and things will be back to slightly normal. It's summer, it gets hot, right? Okay. So let's see. Starting, page 64. Communism will make mistakes, Dubois continued, but today it marches triumphantly on in education and science, in home and food, with increased freedom of thought and deliverance from dogma. In the end, communism will triumph. This was all so easily disproved, even in 1961, but only a member of the talented 10th could possibly believe it. But believe it he and his comrades did, and they began to subject America to their alchemy. In the 1970s, the earnings growth began to falter, especially among young Black men. One symptom of the impending decline was Black participation in the workforce. Up until 1960, that participation was robust. After 1960, Black male participation fell much quicker than that of whites, even when the variables of schooling and age were held constant. For younger men, increased involvement in crime and imprisonment and a decline in marriage possibly underlie the decline in work attachment, wrote the authors of the Civil Rights Commission report with unusual candor. For older men, much of the decline was attributed to the liberalization and rising benefit levels of federal disability programs, supplemented by food stamps and other benefits. Without even looking closely, I could see what was happening in the neighborhoods of South Central. State and federal officials were all but encouraging people like me and my friends to abandon our kids. They may not have done this intentionally, but they did so just the same. Regretfully, I speak from experience. In my senior year, as I said earlier, I impregnated my high school sweetheart. Of course, I should have done the right thing and married her, but California beckoned, and I knew the government would take care of her. The state would not give my son a father to look up to, but it would make sure he and his mother would be fed and sheltered. And at the time, that was enough to clear my still unformed conscience. That's sad. My relationship with my son would turn out better than I had any right to think it would, and I am grateful for that. But it is hard not to look back at those years without cringing. Farrakhan and Jackson and those clowns were telling me that since the white man screwed me over, it was time for him to pay me back. Reparations for slavery in all but name. Many academics were thinking much as they did. Hello, Chaos Confessional. In 1966, two of them, Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven, formally drafted a plan that would have a real impact for the next 50 years. It should not surprise anyone that the two taught at Columbia, the same university that produced Barack Obama. In the spirit of W.E.B. Du Bois, Cloward and Piven knew better than the people themselves what was good for the people's long-term welfare. True, Cloward and Piven were white, but Du Bois was a fool to think that the talented 10th would yield to the black talented 10th. Given white control over most academic institutions and political parties, black socialists had to secure white favor to get whatever goodies white socialists were willing to hand out. In time, this would lead black leadership to portray black citizens on critical issues like abortion and marriage, but that was all down the road. In the 1960s, the marching orders came from white alchemists like Cloward and Piven to overwhelm the system. If enough people signed up for welfare and other benefits programs, their collective demands could break the system and force a social revolution. Since so many of these programs had been targeted at blacks, and since blacks were relatively easy to organize given their shared institutions and compressed neighborhoods, alchemists used the black poor as their battering ram against the free enterprise system. The Ku Klux Klan could not have devised a better strategy to kill the soul of the black community. In 1950, 5 out of every 6 black children were born to married parents. By 1990, that number had dropped to a disgraceful 2 out of 6. Federal welfare reform halted the slide in the 1990s, but Obama and pals have undone all those reforms. In California, where I live, the state's overly generous welfare payments assured that behaviors would not improve. The legislature persisted in providing lifetime welfare benefits at a rate unmatched by any state in the continental 48. Not only did the strategy corrupt California's black population, but it is now working its black magic on immigrants, many of them here lawlessly from Mexico and Central America. As Booker T. Washington warned in his Atlanta speech, if blacks were not allowed to secure a trade and earn their self-respect, we shall prove a veritable body of death, stagnating, depressing, retarding every effort to advance the body politic. Anyone who has visited South Central lately, or any American city for that matter, knows that Washington's worst fears have come true. Drive down just any major street in a black neighborhood and you will see the same thing. Boarded up storefronts, the occasional liquor store, a Vietnamese nail salon every few blocks. Oh no. The occasional, I'm like, this doesn't sound too different from a lot of places. Oh, I mean, since COVID, like the nail salons are going strong though. Like the liquor stores and the nail salons, they weathered the storm. They weren't going anywhere. Hello, Yoda, Calvin's Freddy, aka Steven. France is falling what? Well, I was worried though. I don't want to get into that, but let's not get into the French. Let's get back to JLP, okay? The occasional convenience store run by a frightened family of immigrants, a run-down beauty parlor, and maybe a big drug chain like Walgreens or CVS sitting there like a colonial outpost of some greater civilization. There's a siren. In Los Angeles, Hispanics have taken over commerce in the inner city, even at the intersection of Florence and Normandy, the epicenter of the Rodney King riots. The young people who might have started a business or built one never learned the needed skills. Their educators from the talented 10th pushed them through school whether they learned anything or not. If they were halfway bright, they used affirmative action to push them through colleges a notch above their level of competence. There to protect their self-esteem, as often as not, they majored in useless subjects like Black studies or sports management or gender studies. In the world of educators, credentials mattered more than skills. At W.E.B. Du Bois High School in Baltimore, for instance, the school motto is every student college ready. The problem, of course, is that the motto is both unrealistic and untrue. Although Du Bois is a better than average Baltimore high school, only half the seniors who take the English proficiency test pass it, and the other half leave school without language skills or any skills of value. Worse, in every inner city school, boys are overrepresented among the discards. Those who have watched the powerful Baltimore-based HBO series The Wire, who likes The Wire? Anybody watch The Wire? I never finished watching it, but I did get into it for a while. I don't know if I could handle it now. Honestly, I don't know. I might be too sensitive now to, well, anyway. Okay, so those who have watched The Wire know how many of these discarded boys will end up, namely, either in prison or dead. Many more will shuffle between low-end jobs or the unemployment line or disability checks, mooching off their mothers or their girlfriends. We see these lost souls everywhere we turn in the inner city. One reason we see them on the streets is because they don't have the wherewithal to own a car. The first step toward a middle-class life in every city but the densest few, like New York. In Los Angeles, if you don't have a car, you don't have a future. Interesting. I think that's, yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking of the people I know in LA. Yeah, the ones who they've had to have vehicles. It's been an issue. Not everyone I know, but for those who are like earning, because I knew someone who was on disability. She's legally disabled, who lives there. And she doesn't have a car, but I'm sure you're all very interested. Hello, modern gentlemen. Stacy, who else is here? Calvin's Freddie, aka Steven. My goodness. You went from trolling Hake to now trolling Fred. You know what that's going to do for Fred's ego, right? You building him up? Okay. Let's get back to the book. The look is the same everywhere. When I was a boy, young Black men prided themselves on looking sharp. Today, they all too often look like clowns, their pants drooping halfway to their knees, their shirts loose and oversized, their $200 Nikes extravagantly colored and unlaced. Just by the way they dress, they disqualify themselves from many a likely job. Plus, as someone told them in some self-esteem course somewhere along the way, they are too good for entry-level work. A Mick job in street language. According to a Pew study, in the last 15 years alone, the share of 16 to 24-year-olds saying they didn't want a job rose from 29% to 39%. I bet it's higher nowadays, honestly. Honestly, I bet it is. Just the way that I don't know. I don't want to, not every Gen Z I've met is a bad worker. But some of them really are, like some of them really swallow that juice and just like have ran with it. Like they're all about like doing the bare minimum and, just, being generally not responsible when they are employed, not taking it seriously. But yeah, like I said, not all I've met. Some have been pretty responsible and hard workers. So shout out to those people. Okay. Although not broken out by race, young blacks likely score even higher than 39%. Well, okay, that's speculative. It is discouraging to think how these young people will make it through the next 50 of their so-called productive years. I was fortunate to grow up when and where I did, under the educational influence of Booker T. Washington and not W.E.B. Du Bois. On the plantation, especially with a strict taskmaster like my grandfather, I learned how to get up early in the morning, get to work or school on time, use tools, perform useful work, and finish a project I'd started. I was not alone in this. At my last high school reunion, I saw that just about everyone I went to school with had a decent job and a home of his own. Even during my own wayward years in Los Angeles, I always had skills enough to get a job and work ethic enough to keep one. At the Bond School, we try to instill these basic understandings into our students along with core education. In addition, in the Booker T. Washington tradition, we teach tangible skills like carpentry. It pains me to drive by construction sites and see few, if any, Black workers. These jobs pay well not only in money but in self-esteem. Young men with hands-on skills are always in demand, and not just on work sites. Their families appreciate them, and their women appreciate them even more. That is true. I love a man with some skills. Who don't? Who don't appreciate a man with some skills? Unfortunately, the reason I don't see young Blacks on work sites is because too few of them have the skills or the work ethic needed. Employers wish there were more of them. The government even rewards employers for hiring Black workers. They just can't find them. For the most part, whites and Hispanics, especially those from rural areas, have been spared the W.E.B. Du Bois legacy. They have not been taught that manual labor is a shameful thing. They are also likelier to have had a father figure in the house or nearby who could show them and teach them basic skills. In one of life's great ironies, the birth mother of Apple founder Steve Jobs insisted that his adoptive parents have advanced academic degrees. When the parent she had picked out chose a baby girl instead, Paul and Clara Jobs stepped up. The fact that Paul Jobs was not a college graduate deeply upset the birth mother, but what Paul Jobs did have was a garage full of tools. He was a tinkerer and inventor and instilled the love of the same in his adopted son. The result is the Apple empire. I didn't know Steve Jobs was adopted. That's pretty remarkable. It's an interesting little tidbit. Shout out to the cancel culture. Oh, yes. Where would we be without cancel culture? I'd probably be still caught up in a bunch of BS, honestly. Pediatric neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson may not have had a father in the home, but he had a mother who insisted he read. And unlike many of his peers who were reading books in school about how the white man enslaved his ancestors or stole America from the Indians, Carson was reading about real, tangible things like people in laboratories, pouring chemicals from a beaker into a flask, and watching the steam rise, and completing electrical circuits and discovering galaxies, and looking at microcosms in the microscope. Carson's mother worked 2 or 3 jobs as a domestic just to stay off government support. She felt very strongly that if she gave up and went on welfare, said Carson, that she would give up control of her life and of our lives. She also taught her sons the value of hard work, thrift, and self-reliance. In an interview with the Academy of Achievement, Carson tells of how his mother would take him and his brother out into the countryside on a Sunday, knock on a farmer's door and ask, "Can we pick 4 bushels of corn, 3 for you and 1 for us?" That was not something kids learned at W.E.B. Du Bois High. They were not practical things at Carson's Detroit High School either. The classes were too disruptive. So Carson started working after school in the biology lab, helping the teachers set up experiments. He did much the same with his physics and chemistry teachers. This hands-on experience helped lead him into the field of medicine, where he became one of the leading pediatric neurosurgeons in the country. "I like to do complex things," says Carson. One of the most complex operations he performed, and he was the first person in the world to do it successfully, was to separate Siamese twins joined at the brain. You can't fake that kind of skill. In the world of pediatric neurosurgery, there is no such thing as affirmative action. Social engineers don't mind entrusting the safety of poor people to underqualified firefighters, or the minds of public school students to underqualified teachers. But they are not about to entrust the lives of their own children to underqualified surgeons. I wonder, though, what would happen, with separating Siamese twins at the brain. I'm just I don't know anything about this particular surgery, what happened, but I'm wondering, would one of the twins die or be brain damaged? How does this work, Anyway, I better get off of that train of thought because that's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. Anyway, I'm getting morbid. Okay. In reading about Carson's upbringing, I discovered that he and I shared a life-changing experience. Like me, Carson was driven by anger. He does not explain the source of it, but I suspect it derived directly or indirectly from the absence of a father in his life. His parents divorced when he was 8. In 9th grade, he tried to stab someone with a camping knife and might have succeeded had the kid's belt buckle not gotten in the way. Oh, thank God. The incident shocked him. He could see where his anger was taking him, so he locked himself up in the bathroom and started praying. "Lord, I can't deal with this temper," he said. Then he picked up a Bible and started reading from the book of Proverbs. That was the first day that I started doing it, says Carson, and I've been doing it every day since. I know just how he feels. Carson explains how soul-deadening anger can be. He did not cite the Dubois crowd as the ones doing the stoking, but he knows the consequences of being stoked. If people can make you angry, they can control you. That's true. So why do you want to give up control to every little insignificant person walking along? Having conquered his anger, Carson set out to be the kind of man and father he wanted to be. The American dream to me means that you have the ability to determine where you are going, he said, and I am so grateful that I was born in America. My regret is that Ben Carson did not run for president in 2008 and spare the nation 8 years of Barack Obama. Carson is a spiritual heir of Booker T. Washington, but Obama had no use for Washington. He traces at least some of his development to Du Bois. As a fatherless teen in Hawaii, Obama too was consumed by an anger he could not identify. In a 1995 speech, he admitted to feeling directionless, without father figures around to guide me and steer my anger. Although he had no roots in the American slave experience, his leftist mother reminded him frequently that the white man had oppressed the black man in Africa as well. When Obama's father came to visit the 10-year-old Obama in Hawaii, he said to Obama's class, and reinforced the message, telling the students of Kenya's struggle to be free, how the British had wanted to stay and unjustly rule the people, just as they had in America, how many had been enslaved only because of the color of their skin, just as they had in America. Later, a black friend steered Obama, now an angry teenager, toward white oppression as the explanation for his unhappiness. His communist mentor, Frank Marshall Davis, reinforced that message. To affirm this nightmare vision, Obama began to read Du Bois, among other angry black authors. But finally, he was put off by Du Bois' bitterness. Obama could not quite accept withdrawal into smaller and smaller coil of rage as the price of being black. He turned instead to Malcolm X, a man who indulged his own bitterness for 12 years. Not as a slave, but as I mentioned earlier, a zombie. Malcolm was referring to his 12 years in the racist Nation of Islam. In the last year of his life, he broke away and aligned himself with the larger Islamic world. His repeated acts of self-creation spoke to me, wrote Obama in Dreams from My Father. But Obama was still unsure of how he wanted to recreate himself. In his book, Obama followed this moment of reflection with the frequently told story of how his grandmother reacted badly to a shakedown by a large black man. I knew that men who might easily have been my brothers could still inspire their rawest fears, he writes. To talk through this incident, at least in his book, Obama went to visit his mentor, his own personal Du Bois, Frank Marshall Davis, a card-carrying member of the Communist Party USA, and a pornographer to boot. That's so sad. You know, it's so interesting because in the Soviet Union, pornography was, and in many communist nations, like pornography was totally censored. And I remember reading the feminist, she was a Russian Soviet feminist, Tatiana Mamonova. She wrote a book that I got a hold of. I still have it. It's Women in Russia. And she was one of the first, like, really internationally known Soviet feminists who actually ended up getting exiled or living in exile because she just, you know, she couldn't continue her work in the Soviet Union. But it was interesting. I read an interview, or Sheila Jeffries writing an interview talking about how she said the first thing that she noticed that was different about living in the West was that pornography was everywhere, which was really interesting to me. Like, she said even on like billboards and things, the imagery was so obscene that you would not have seen it in the Soviet Union at all. Like they wouldn't have anything up like that would be provocative in that way. So it's kind of interesting to me where, like, then, you look at this guy who's a communist in the US and he's a pornographer. It's just kind of interesting because it seemed like they held on to, at least a lot of the nations held on to some pretty traditional views. And there was, talk of like persecution of homosexuals in different countries, like Cuba and in Russia as well. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. It has changed, though. It has become like you would not find, I mean, you may find some. There are, like I said, there are a number of these kind of like conservative communists, at least from what I've met today, in the modern like America, people who identify that way, they are more traditional type of people. But it does seem that the like overwhelming majority of the left, at least, is so like at the forefront of pornography and like pushing just, sexual liberalism. Sexual liberalism is what I'll call it. So chat is going off. Interesting. Anyway, this is provoking stuff in me. Let me know if you want me to stop. Okay. Let me know if you want me to stop and just read. So, okay. Where was I? To talk through this incident. Oh, I know, we were already there. After reciting a few of the injustices his Black ancestors suffered, Davis told Obama, "What I'm trying to tell you is that your grandma's right to be scared. She's at least as right as Stanley, Obama's grandfather, is. She understands that Black people have a reason to hate. That's just how it is. For your sake, I wish it were otherwise, but it's not, so you might as well get used to it." Well, that sounds like pretty rational. That's a very rational response, honestly, from this communist pornographer. The book largely tells the story of Obama's search for identity. The problem is the various sources of wisdom that he turns to inevitably assure him that it's okay to hate. I found that too. In my life, when I was kind of searching for a mother figure, I would say. I did find a number of women that were very much in that mindset of thinking it's good to hate. Anyway, it's interesting to me. I kind of had that, like, hey, I kind of went through that. Anyway, I'm returning to my reading. While Ben Carson and I were turning to God and asking him to relieve us of our anger, the only God Obama found was in Reverend Jeremiah Wright's church. There, during Obama's fake epiphany, Wright claimed to be preaching hope, but what he really was preaching was hate. Reverend Wright spoke of Sharpsville and Hiroshima, writes Obama, the callousness of policymakers in the White House and in the State House. The Sharpeville massacre, where white police shot and killed numerous Black protesters, occurred in South Africa 30 years before Wright's 1988 sermon. Hiroshima, of course, refers to the dropping of the atom bomb on a Japanese city 15 years before Sharpeville. What the two incidences have in common is that the white men killed people of color. To Wright, it did not matter that the then ruthless Japanese military had invited their own destruction, not just by bombing Pearl Harbor, but by their hair-curling brutality against the neighboring Chinese. Oh yeah, the Japanese were horrible in World War II. Like, honestly, William's call today, I think it was on Joelle's show, it was I agreed with him. Like, he was very spot on. Like, I'm all about the Allies. The right side run in World War II. Like, you cannot imagine how bad things would have been under like Japanese imperialist rule. Like, imagine the Japanese. Like, imagine. Oh, I read years ago the Philip K. Dick book, The Man in the High Castle, which was turned into, I think, a series on Prime, which I've also seen since then. And yeah, I just, it was interesting. I mean, the book was interesting, obviously. I remember it being funnier. More of his, I feel like his books that I read anyway, I only read a few of his books, but I feel like they were a lot funnier than like the film adaptations that came afterward. But that's an interesting insight from Modern Gentlemen. I kind of agree with you there. Like, porn really does corrode men. I mean, it just it does. It makes them very. I mean, I've talked with women. I know we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't have these kind of salacious conversations. I don't know. I feel like there's an appropriate time and space to have conversations about that side of life. But anyway, I think that's a very true observation from just what I've seen. Yeah, it definitely. I mean, it does so much to weaken men, and it's interesting. Like, when I first kind of got interested in the anti-porn movement, I was looking at it totally from this, women are victims of the sexist culture narrative. And that is not very motivating, I think, to get men to, stop being consumers of pornography or, being consumers of the sex trade generally. It's just like, it's in their selfish interest too. It's in their own best interest. I know Pearl Harbor was not a sneak attack. Still, I think the right thing happened, okay? Like, come on, what? Like, come on. And like what he said about the way the Japanese were massacring the Chinese, it was. Anyway, let's continue. I'm taking a while with this page. Okay, where was I? Obama writes earlier in the book, in talking to self-professed nationalists like Rafiq, a Nation of Islam follower, I came to see how the blanket indictment of everything white served a central function in their message of uplift. How, psychologically at least, one depended on the other. Although he seemed to reject Rafiq's strategy, Obama found a father figure in Wright who was doing exactly the same thing. The bottom line is that Obama never really learned anything, never came to grips with his own internal strife. He found no peace in Christianity, because the Christianity he half-heartedly adopted had nothing to do with Christ and everything to do with Jeremiah Wright. Obama's real religion was socialism. He spent his early adulthood not learning an extraordinary useful skill, as Dr. Carson had, but rather organizing his community along the Cloward Pibbins Saul Alinsky model. Unfortunately, those being organized learned nothing useful to improve their own skill sets or character. Instead, they were bundled into an angry mass and used to break down the system, except as always, the system won out in the end. So that was chapter 8. of the antidote. And we're going to move forward into chapter 9, which is titled Tarnished Angels. Comedian Richard Pryor, who lived in Los Angeles when I did, had a revelation very much like my own, and he had it roughly at the same stage of his life. He was 39 when he saw a twisted and deformed apparition of himself. He asked that image if he was the devil. Yes, that said the apparition, I'm you. Pryor and I responded in different ways. I opened my heart to God and turned my life around. Pryor doused himself with 150 proof rum and set himself on fire. It was no accident. It was an act of self-obliteration. Although he joked about the incident after he recovered, he suffered third-degree burns over more than 50% of his body. Truth is, he never really did recover. Worse, he learned little from the experience. Richard Pryor was an angry, tormented soul. His story is worth telling because so many Black lives are lived as destructively as Pryor lived his own. A few others are documented well enough to be instructive. Born in Peoria in 1940, Pryor had a hustler for a father and a hooker for a mother. Whoa! Both abandoned him when he was a boy and left him in the care of Mama, a grandmother who ran a bordello and beat him as she saw fit. At the age of 7, Pryor was sexually abused by an adult male repeatedly over a period of time. This happens all too often in homes without caring parents. The abuse alone was enough to cripple Pryor. Coupled with abandonment, it was all but fatal to his emotional development. Although I too was raised by a grandmother and can empathize with Pryor's pain, my problems were slight compared to his. Pryor was a brilliant comic with great powers of empathy, but he never learned to live the way an adult male should. Point Fire has an interesting question. Oh my goodness. This is interesting. I just noticed it. I'm sorry, I'm not paying too much attention to the chat, but interesting. Would I feel safer at a train station at 3 a.m. in my city or in Tokyo? I probably would feel safer in Tokyo. Is that stupid? Like, I don't know. It's not even like Portland is that dangerous. Like, I mean, I've had, weird run-ins with people, and things do happen. I don't want to act like they don't, but generally, but I'm not really out that late. Usually if I'm out late, it's at a reasonable late time. But yeah, probably Tokyo. I just feel like Japan seems to be a lot safer. But that just could be a perception. I don't know. I've never heard anything about crime in Tokyo being a problem. God, what about that story about that poor Kiwi woman, the woman from New Zealand who was on vacation here and got killed? Not Portland. She was, I think, in LA, or somewhere in California. But oh my God, that was horrible, wasn't it? It's just like you come to another country on vacation and surprise, you're going home in a body bag. Like awful. I mean, I guess it could happen anywhere, but just shameful. And you won't hear anything about crime in Tokyo either. Okay. I have said, though, I've had female friends who lived in Tokyo, like they were on student visas or things like that, or they were working there. And they were like Western women, and they said that they were sexually assaulted quite a bit. So I don't know. They said that guys will just come up to you and like rub their penis on you, and like they'll touch you, like on the trains and stuff, they said that that's pretty common, especially like if you are a Western woman. And I have heard that too with like white women I've known who've lived like in China as well, dealing with sexual harassment in that way. But I mean, it happens here too, but they just said it was like really, really common in, at least in Japan anyway. Number of women have told me that they've had that similar experience. So, Point buyer, we're reading the antidote right now. Don't try to control my whole chat with your agenda. Go get your own channel for that. Come on. Nah, not happening, Hot Wheels. No, I'm pretty sure they're telling the truth. But yeah, I'm sure India is worse. Yeah. Although I mean, I didn't hear of men in China like putting their, did I say the whole word? Their, you know, whole junk on you, or like rubbing their junk on you in China. I didn't hear about that. It was Japan specifically, and specifically like on public transport. It's an issue. But anyway, let's continue. There was absolutely zero he could teach me about living, said Franklin Ajayi. I'm not familiar with Franklin Ajayi or Ajayi. Does anybody know who this comedian is? A successful Black comedian in his own right. I could learn from his comedy, but I didn't see anything about how he lived his life that I wanted to emulate. Zero. Said Jennifer Lee, his live-in white girlfriend, whom he beat on a nearly daily basis. I never met a man who needed love so badly and resisted it so much. Lee would write a book about Pryor entitled it appropriately, Tarnished Angel. You crazy ass woman. That women are so insane sometimes. Like, this man is a demon beating you every day, and you're like, my tarnished angel. Like, girl. If it had not been for his attraction to white women, Pryor might have become a Black Panther, a terrorist group with whom he openly sympathized. A terrorist group, okay. His alienation ran that deep. Instead, he projected his anger and self-loathing into his comedy. He had a gift for making his white fans feel uncomfortable without pushing them over the edge. He fed on their guilt. They, in turn, felt they deserved the discomfort, thinking it was their fault Pryor suffered as he did. His hip Black fans, meanwhile, enjoyed his boldness and edginess. They liked the way he put screws to the man. Career alchemist Cornel West. Cornel West. Cornel West 2024. A socialist academic called Pryor the freest Black man America has ever had. Interesting. And compared him favorably to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Pryor, however, knew he was not free at all. He was a prisoner of his own dark past. Toward the tail end of his career, he made an autobiographical film called JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling. In the film, he retraces the steps of his childhood. He sees his mother turning tricks. He hears his father say about him, this boy ain't shh, and his mama ain't shh either. To the end, Pryor saw himself the way his father saw him. When his grandmother died, Pryor, then a superstar, collapsed in grief. Everything I've had and everything I've got is gone, said Pryor, who compensated for her loss by plunging deeper into drug use. You don't need to be a psychiatrist to see that Pryor was an empty shell of a man, and you don't need to be a sociologist to see that his failures were not the fault of white America, but of a deformed, godless family life. Few Black men born in 1940 experienced anything like the family trauma Pryor did. For Black men born in 1980, this kind of trauma was close to the norm. That was the year Rob Peace was born in Orange, New Jersey, a rundown enclave bordering Newark. His mother, Jackie, was a responsible workaholic who refused to marry Rob's father, Skeet Douglas, a smarter-than-average street hustler and drug dealer. She also refused to live with him after Rob was born for fear of the influences Skeet would bring to bear on his son. Unlike many such mothers, Jackie read to her son at every opportunity and got him interested in books. Skeet objected. He worried that Rob would grow up too soft for the world they inhabited. The parents, almost never together with their son, pulled him in two different directions. They fought often and loudly for his soul. On the surface, at least, Rob Peace took after his mother. He was hardworking, responsible, and an impressively good student. But still, as Jeff Hobbs writes in his excellent book on Peace's life, she saw the anger in him, a gradually thickening shade just beneath the sometimes impenetrable veil of his eyes. The anger hardened when Skeet was sentenced to life for murdering two sisters, just as Peace was to start fourth grade at a private school his mother could barely afford. He killed two sisters. Peace helped out as best he could, writes Hobbs. He aggressively assumed the role of husband to his mother, not exactly the healthiest role for a 10-year-old to play. In the ensuing years, Peace's progress through life testified to the way the white world welcomes ambitious young black men. He won a scholarship to St. Benedict's Prep in Newark, an excellent Catholic school with a largely black student body. There, Peace starred in the classroom and in water polo, not your typical inner-city sport. A wealthy benefactor took an interest in Peace and paid his way through Yale, where he bypassed the African Studies trap and majored in molecular biophysics and biochemistry. On the side, he worked in a cancer and infectious disease laboratory. It was at Yale that Peace roomed with Hobbs, a white kid from an affluent family who would chronicle his life. That life was short and tragic because Peace never got over his anger. He learned instead to displace it. I hate all these entitled mother effers, he said in Hobbs' presence, referring to virtually all his fellow Yale students. Excuse me, I'm gonna adjust. Okay. That hatred helped ease any guilt about selling them marijuana at prices he could never get on the street. It also enabled him to join with his fellow black students in staging their own graduation. More destructively, his vast reservoir of anger blinded him to the fact that his father, as Hobbs makes clear, was rightly convicted for killing two women. Peace preferred to blame the white establishment for Skeet's continued imprisonment. Anger has a way of crippling people. It sure does. In ways that are rarely talked about. For all Peace's talents, for all his prospects, he never got traction in the real world once he moved beyond the discipline of prep school and college. He returned home and resumed the drug trafficking that was so easy and profitable at Yale. In the mean streets of Newark and the Oranges, he found a less dependable clientele and much rougher competitors. They saw him as a soft target and murdered him before he even thought to look in the mirror and see what was missing. Despite his Catholic education, Peace had no God in his life. In his otherwise insightful book, Hobbs fails to comment on this. That much said, his book forced even the New York Times to acknowledge how the crippling emotional trauma of fatherlessness, coupled with the rage of generations, caused Peace's demise. Hobbs avoided the institutional racism charge the media usually fall back on to explain black failure. Once the scales fell from my eyes, I could finally see how many young black men were as badly damaged as Peace and Pryor. When we launched Bond to address the problem, I thought that though blacks had fallen far, there was a great chance for us to climb back up. But now, at the end of Obama's divisive presidency, I am not so sure. I find myself wondering if the battle has been lost before I remind myself we have to fight on regardless. Irish Repub 84 is referring to me as Minnie Mouse. And Modern Gentleman apparently concurs with the assessment and cannot unsee it. And you all expect me to continue reading. I like this little headband. It's cute. Isn't it cute? It's cute. Gosh. Rome thinks it's kind of cute. Okay. All right. I'll continue. I recall the conclusion I came to a few years back after much soul searching, an internally tumultuous and spiritually troublesome exercise. At the time, I saw the death of Jesus Christ. I saw the death of the black soul. I saw the miraculous resurrection of Christ, and therein I saw the glimmer of hope. Richard Pryor, by contrast, played the resurrection for cheap, self-indulgent laughs. In one autobiographical screenplay, he set a scene in a cathedral. There he encounters Jesus on the cross, and Jesus begs Pryor to help him down. Pryor obliges Jesus and is helping him out of the church when several months see what is happening. Beat Pryor up and nail Jesus back on the cross. As Jesus cries out in agony, Pryor vows to tell the world what he saw, to which a monk replies, "Who's going to believe you, N-word?" Oh, I had a pass there to read the N-word and I didn't. Did they got me? They got me. If I was in high school Terri would have read that. Oh my God. High school Terri would have been like, N-word pass. I guess I've matured. I don't need to say it. Today, too many young black men like Peace and Pryor have turned their backs on God. Like them both, they wallow in their anger and assume the role of an N-word as a perverse badge of honor. But God is the one force in the universe that cares not at all about their color. If they can learn to see past their anger, they will see that the only hope for themselves and for the black community is a resurrection of miraculous proportions. Blacks of today must atone for the sins of our fathers to command the mercy and love that would precipitate such a resurrection. A daunting task this is. Whereas Christ died with a holy nature, the black soul has died in the gallows of weakness and immorality. 70% or more of black babies today are born out of wedlock. This has created an epidemic of fatherlessness. The black woman carries no respect for a man of such weakness and harbors a festering hatred for this man who bedded and then abandoned her. Have you heard me say this before? Do I speak too bluntly? This is as it has to be. Let me repeat the words of William Lloyd Garrison. I will be as harsh as truth and as uncompromising as justice. On this subject, I do not wish to think or speak or write with moderation. Our subject, I would insist, is as serious as Garrison's. There is a vicious cycle at work here. A man is attracted to a woman who has a spirit similar to his mother's. But he leaves her upon sensing this is the same spirit he resented growing up. The father's absence makes the mother the most influential figure in the family, but her anger toward the man who left her is so great that she cannot easily be a positive influence. The black youth is victimized by his mother's dominant hatred. With no father as a figure of guidance and respect, the child yields readily, as Pryor did, to the force of darkness. Said Pryor at one point in rejecting help, "I don't see any need to be in reality, because I've seen how ugly the world is." This was said by an enormously wealthy, much-loved man decades after the legal playing field had been leveled. Ugly? In the past, when a child was born into dire circumstances, he often compensated with a desperate drive to succeed. He innately felt that he must work hard, harder than all those around him, just to be able to survive. Too many young black men today feel none of this. Their focus is on the next 40-ouncer, the next blunt, the next hit. Meanwhile, young black girls do as their mothers did and adopt the same vicious emasculatory techniques. Thus, the cycle perpetuates. With few strong examples of God's commandments playing out in the black community, that community veers toward destruction. Not all blacks are like this, but the cycle I describe, sad to say, is an accurate representation of the evil that has taken a hold of Black America. It would not surprise me if God were tempted to pull the plug on our people as he did in Noah's time. The penance that the black community is going to have to pay to regain God's favor is incalculable. God ordained a spiritual order of God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over children. Black men have lost their connection with Christ, and women have exploited that weakness to become the head of the temporal realm. This is a violation of God's established order and will never work. It is because black men refuse to be strong and speak against this that God has seemingly let the black community go. We are so far lost that it is going to require a huge step up by black men to regain God's blessing. Just a few men stepping up will not absolve this sin for the black community. Many will have to sacrifice to rediscover our once sacred relationship with him. We all know by now that few, if any, of our leaders will lift a finger to this end. Most have made it clear that they are content to watch us slide further downward, and all the while taking satisfaction in their growing power and wealth. Blacks have a shorter time preference. Shorter time preference. What do you mean? Just my hair, my headband and my hair. Y'all liking the book? I'm liking it. Let's continue. When Barack Obama first emerged, I saw the possibility of expanding the discussion. Here was a black man who may have grown up in a dysfunctional white home, but who married a black American woman and seemed to be a good father to his 2 daughters. As much as I distrusted his politics and his long-standing relationship with the hateful, hypocritical Reverend Jeremiah Wright, I thought Obama might still present a useful example to the many shattered souls within the black community. Obama's Father's Day sermon in June 2008 at the 20,000-member Apostolic Church of God in the south side of Chicago renewed my hope. His message was strong. The New York Times summed up the message in its headline, "Obama sharply assails absent black fathers." Obama preached, "If we are honest with ourselves, we'll admit that what too many fathers are is missing from too many lives and too many homes." And the almost entirely black congregation called back its approval. Surprisingly, Obama zeroed in on the heart of the problem. You and I know how true this is of the African American community. Obama even addressed the unfortunate results of this disorder, telling the congregants that boys who grow up in fatherless homes are 20 times more likely to end up in prison. Of absentee fathers, Obama said words that I might have said myself. They have abandoned their responsibilities, acting like boys instead of men. The response in the church itself and in the Black community afterward was highly positive. Women in particular seemed to appreciate his remarks, and some of those posting online compared Obama favorably to Jesse Jackson, who himself was one of those absent fathers. Despite his own prominence as a preacher and role model, despite his own anguish at being born out of wedlock, Jackson had very publicly fathered a so-called love child. He was not at all pleased by the comments of the upstart Obama. Not long after Obama's speech, Jackson's true feelings slipped out on a hot mic before a TV appearance. I want to cut his nuts out. Jackson said to the fellow next to him, Jesse, you said that? Jesse Jackson said, I want to cut his nuts out. I don't remember this. Barack, he's talking down to Black people, telling N-words how to behave. Jackson would make a half-hearted apology, but much of the left-wing media supported what he said. Jackson gaffe turns focus on Obama's move to the right. Read the headline of Britain's left-leaning Guardian. Oh God, the Guardian. As the Guardian article spelled out, Obama's comments on individual responsibility irritated alchemists like Jackson, who hold government policies to account for the impoverishment of African American families. In any case, Obama got the message. He never told N-words how to behave again. Obama gets it. Oh, okay, yeah, CPT, yeah, okay, yeah. That's what you mean. I don't know that they can't think ahead or that it's not a can't think ahead, obviously, because there are those that do. It's a moral problem. It's a character issue that's kind of ingrained in culture, you know. But obviously it doesn't have to be that way. People, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, what race somebody is. They can either be, you know, responsible or not. And say IQ is destiny. I mean, I don't agree. Have you ever like worked with somebody that's maybe low IQ? I mean, who hasn't been? No, I mean, like really, like somebody slow, or maybe, you know, who has some sort of like brain issue. I did a couple of times at different jobs that I had where I was working with somebody who was like of a low IQ, you know, slower than average, where it was noticeable. And like they were capable. They were totally capable of getting to work on time. Okay, but like, what is IQ as a measure of intelligence? Like, I don't know. I don't know, Stacey. It's like, okay, there's hard data, but I'm talking about colored people time. And I'm saying that like that's not genetic. That's a behavioral, like moral issue, not a genetic issue. You can be dumb and get to work on time. And like I don't even think Black people are, I mean, dumb. So yeah. As 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 Forrest Gump said, stupid is as stupid does, right? uh, They get up late in Uganda, Calvin? They show up to work late? Where are you at on the tism, Yoda? Yoda's always punctual. He always shows up right when he needs to, right? All right. Anyway, moving on from this chat. Okay, chapter 10, bloody shirts. I think I'll read on a little bit. Let me look at how big this chapter is, see where I might want to stop. It's not a very big chapter. I might be able to make it through. What time is it? 7:24. Yeah, I could keep going a bit. The civil rights movement is dead. As blue-collar philosopher Eric Hoffer once said, every great cause begins as a movement, becomes a business, and eventually degenerates into a racket. The civil rights movement has been a racket for many, many years. I had the good fortune of remembering the movement when it was still alive. As a boy growing up in Alabama, I watched the pioneers of that movement earn their freedom. Alabama was ground zero in the real civil rights movement, that is true. Selma was only 3 hours or so away from where I grew up. I was 15 when the famous march happened there, and I was old enough to know what was going on. At school, we followed it closely. They seemed like decent people doing the right thing. Unlike Barack Obama, I do have a claim on Selma. I have more of a claim on Clayton. As a high school student, I participated in a sit-in with my classmates at the Barber County Courthouse in Clayton, Alabama. It was a very heady experience. I would like to tell you it was as scary as Selma, but it wasn't even close. We sang "We Shall Overcome" on the courthouse steps and felt righteous about it. For their part, the townspeople generally ignored us. At the time, it felt like the right thing to do. In the South, blacks were still being denied some basic civil rights, like voting and attending public universities. I must say, though, that I had a different take on the sit-ins taking place at lunch counters throughout the South. As much as I admired the courage of those sitting in, I was not sure why they would want to patronize a private business that did not want them. I also wondered why the owners should have to serve people they did not want to serve, and wondered where all this would lead. Even then, I thought the civil rights movement was drifting away from a real expression of freedom toward coercion. This much became obvious on the day the civil rights movement died. It did not die on April 4th, 1968, the day Martin Luther King was shot in Memphis. It died on the next day, April 5th, 1968, while we school kids in Alabama sat in class almost too sad and shocked to talk. Jesse Jackson had the presence of mind to fly to Chicago and hire a public relations agent. The agent took the allegedly grief-stricken Jackson from interview to interview in a chauffeur-driven car so he could raise money for his Chicago operation. Among Jackson's appearances was one on the NBC Today show. There he appeared in a shirt that he claimed was smeared with King's blood and boasted on national television, "He died in my arms." This was a total lie. Jackson hid in the bushes on the floor below King's room at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis after he heard the shots ring out. He came upstairs only after the danger had passed. Andrew Young and Ralph Abernathy were the ones who tended to the dying King. People freaked out and did strange things. Jesse put his hands in the blood and wiped it on the front of his shirt, remembered Andrew Young. Said Abernathy of Jackson, he was young and overly ambitious with a big ego. King never trusted Jackson, and he had good cause, but no matter. You know what? I kind of want to dip back into reading Where Do We Go From Here by Martin Luther King Jr. I was reading it before on the channel, but I mean, maybe after this, I might dip back into that because he was writing in that book about his relationships with other civil rights leaders. So it might be kind of interesting to look at that again. You know, It's bedtime. Okay. You'll listen for a while so you don't have to podcast it tomorrow. Okay, anyway. Okay. King never trusted Jackson, and he had good cause, but no matter. From that day forward, Jackson made himself the public face of the American civil rights movement. In a way, that bloody shirt was the perfect symbol of the lie the movement became. It represented not sacrifice, but self-aggrandizement at the expense of the people looking for genuine leadership. In the wake of King's death, Abernathy took over the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. But Jackson had the charisma that Abernathy lacked, and he had the shirt. Through deceit and outright thuggery, Jackson consolidated his power, intimidating his would-be rivals and threatening the media. In 1971, when a black reporter for the Chicago Tribune, Angela Parker, reported on Jackson's alleged theft of funds from the SCLC, Jackson chastised her from his pulpit, and his supporters picketed her home and terrorized her with threatening phone calls. Jackson's henchmen threatened another black reporter, Barbara Reynolds, after she wrote an honest biography of Jackson's tainted rise to power, and after black journalist Milton Coleman reported on Jackson's anti-Semitic slurs. Louis Farrakhan threatened him on Jackson's behalf. This was the same Louis Farrakhan, who, by the way, who said of the so-called Million Man March he organized in 1995, the basic reason that this was called was for atonement and reconciliation. Yeah, right. In fact, the march was a shameless display of power. Only a fellow believer would have bought into Farrakhan's message. One such believer was Barack Obama. He was there. So was Martin Luther King III. So were many Christian pastors. Seeing the pastors there did not surprise me. In my frequent debates with them on my radio show and in public forums, I know that many of them have lost their way. Unable to challenge me on facts, they accuse me of being judgmental, or worse. Every now and then, a pastor will lay a house N-word on me, or an Uncle Tom. But at least I didn't Tom for Farrakhan at the Million Man March. In December 2001, I got to see the civil rights movement now deep into its bloody shirt phase in action. The occasion was a meeting at the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Jackson's Rainbow Push Trade Bureau. It was a classic Jackson shakedown, this time the Toyota Motor Corporation. Recently, Toyota had run an ad that showed a black man with a gold Toyota SUV embossed on a front tooth. No! The ultra-sensitive Jackson, the same one who referred to New York City as Hymietown, claimed to be offended. The only thing missing is the watermelon, he said in response. To appease Jackson, Toyota was prepared to spend millions on its 21st century diversity strategy, much of which would go to Jackson and his cronies. This meeting was a show of their submission. My PR director urged me to attend, and he and I grabbed seats in the front of the room. Jackson dominated the pageant that followed. From his position on stage, he asked the business people in attendance, mostly black, to raise their hands if they belonged to his trade bureau and identified themselves and their businesses. Those who did not raise their hands were made aware that they could get their share of the goodies by purchasing a membership. Of course, Jackson did not say exactly, get your share of the goodies, but that is what the business people were thinking. I think the phrase Jackson used was open doors. The Toyota vice president on stage, Irv Miller, looked thoroughly whipped. It was his doors that were being opened. Jackson promised other corporate doors would follow. He mentioned BMW to whet the audience's appetite. To show he meant business, Jackson introduced a Rainbow Push member who was being promoted to head Toyota's supplier development program. It was this man who would monitor Toyota's progress in purchasing supplies from female and minority-owned businesses. In other words, he was Jesse's gatekeeper, and everyone knew it. Why minorities and women needed Jackson's help nearly 40 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act was explained only in absurd cliches. Toward the end of the presentation, Jackson Associate gave a fiery speech about how much Jackson had done for blacks and how much he had sacrificed to do it. Then Jackson's posse went from table to table, collecting membership checks from those not yet signed up and contributions to Jackson's 60th birthday bash from everyone but the foolhardy. After the strong arming, Jackson launched a question and answer session. I should add at this point that once I opened my heart to God's love, he drove away all my fear. I say this to explain how I could walk into a lion's den like this one and confront the beast. As the president of a nonprofit conservative organization, I said to Toyota's Miller, I'm concerned that our young people will be locked out of any training programs offered by Toyota because of our conservative beliefs. How can we work directly with Toyota instead of having to go through Jesse Jackson or anyone else because we don't agree with anything they're about? Oh my goodness. Hi, Frederick. And hello, wow, big sexy. Still no shirt? We're gonna have to fundraise to get him a shirt, y'all. Frederick, no, you calling me Minnie Mouse too? Oh my God, that's two of you now. Irish Repub and Frederick called me Minnie Mouse. Oh, Lord. Oh. And T-Ways. Although I asked the question respectfully, I could hear rude remarks and derisive laughter even as I was speaking. When I finished, all hell broke loose. Several of my fellow black citizens leaped out of their seats, shouting profanities. Really? That's pretty insane. Among those doing the leaping was Judge Greg Mathis, the star of his own reality TV show and longtime Jackson supporter. Not Judge Mathis. I remember Judge Mathis. Oh my God. Oh my God. In fact, Mathis headed the Michigan operation of Jackson's 1988 presidential campaign. You've been watching too much TV, Mathis shouted. You've been watching too much O'Reilly. Fox News' Bill O'Reilly had been openly criticizing Jackson's tactics. Well, at least I don't watch your boring show, I said. At that point, Carl Dickerson, co-chair of the event, began attacking me personally, calling me stupid, among other unkind things. Then Jackson jumped into the fray, calling me and other black conservatives parasites who want to pick apples from trees they didn't shake. Oh, man. It went downhill from there. A security guard tried to remove us, but we wouldn't leave. Jackson's son Jonathan and two of his buddies then stood in front of us until the forum ended and attempted to block us when we went to leave. I could hear Jackson yelling behind them, "Get his ass out of here." Mathis then joined in again, saying I needed to leave before you get your ass kicked. Then, when we were trying to leave, Jonathan cursed me and struck me in the shoulder. Jesse Jackson then walked over, joined in the cursing, and incited the crowd to do the same. As I testified at the ensuing trial, I felt like I was at a Klan meeting with assistance from the Washington-based Judicial Watch. We took the Jacksons to court in Los Angeles in 2006. Although the jury ruled for the defendants on some counts and deadlocked on another, this was the first time Jackson was ever made to answer for his bullying tactics in public. Such was the state of the civil rights movement as we moved into a new century. It had stagnated or worse from the moment Jesse Jackson spirited away Martin Luther King's blood. Man, poor Martin. Like, really? Like, man. Freddie would not sucker punch JLP. Oh my God. Not square up. Y'all are so silly. Okay. Incredibly, for the first 40 or so years after King's death, this shameless huckster served as the presumed go-to leader of Black America. He and lesser Black leaders were continually inventing new rights so they could exploit white guilt and extort new benefits that only Black people would enjoy. Why it was that only Black people needed leaders, no one seemed to ask. It was only natural then that when Barack Obama first emerged on the national stage, it was assumed he would be the new leader, the Black Moses, the one to lead us poor, ignorant souls to the promised land. That designation, however, left no place for Jesse Jackson. In his veiled threat to emasculate Obama, Jackson nailed him where he was most vulnerable, his shaky hold on his racial identity. Growing up in Hawaii, all Obama knew about Black America was what he saw on television, which meant he knew nothing about the N-words Jackson threw in his face. Jesse Jackson did not share this weakness. For all of his faults, he had first-hand experience with the civil rights movement. Obama did not. He had to fake his roots. A commemoration of the Selma March caught then-candidate Obama at his phoniest. If he knew anything about this history, he ignored it and made up his own. As Obama told the story in his fake Black preacher voice, the march at Selma inspired a whole chain of events that led to his nearly miraculous birth. The Kennedys were moved by the march to start an airlift for African students. His Kenyan father came to Hawaii, where he met his white mother, who was stirred sufficiently to overcome racial barriers and marry Barack Obama, Sr. They got together and Barack Obama Jr. was born, said Obama in conclusion. So don't tell me I don't have a claim on Selma, Alabama. Don't tell me I'm not coming home to Selma, Alabama. I should be reading it verbatim. I'm not comfortable. Don't ask, Fred cannot give me permission to say the N-word. He's not the arbiter of that. Anyway, he didn't and he wasn't. In reality, Obama Sr. came to America 5 years before the march, during the Eisenhower presidency. By the time of the march, Obama Sr. had long since left Hawaii to get his talented 10th stamp at Harvard. While real Black people were staring down real white state troopers in Selma, little Barry was playing in the Hawaiian surf with Gramps. At Selma, Obama did not even seem to care that people knew he was lying. The reason was simple. He knew that a whole lot of influential white people would go along with him, whatever he said. Although Obama could fool his fans with his Selma lies, he could not fool the Jesse Jacksons of the world. They had him over a barrel, and he knew it. If Obama ever really believed in one America, and that is doubtful, he was afraid to prove it. After the Jackson blowback from his Father's Day speech in Chicago, Obama chose to blame the white man rather than to look within. Jackson owned him. By the time Obama returned to Selma in 2015 to help celebrate the 50th anniversary of the march, so, wow, next year will be 60 years. That's pretty wild. The civil rights movement had degenerated into a noisy scrum of special interest knockoffs. In his speech, Obama went through the whole laundry list of left-wing causes and tied them all to Selma. Women marched through those doors, he said. Latinos marched through those doors. Asian Americans, gay Americans, and Americans with disabilities came through those doors. It disturbed me to see him push gay rights in Selma, or to single out those ethnic groups that Democrats were courting, even those here illegally, and ignore all others. I was not the only one disturbed. I marched with many people back in those days, and I have reached out to some of my friends who marched with me, and all of them are shocked, said Reverend William Owens of the Coalition of African American Pastors. They never thought they would see this day that gay rights would be equated with civil rights. Not one agreed with this comparison. The LGBT community hijacked our movement, a movement they know nothing about, Owens continued. President Obama is delusional to compare our struggle with the struggle for marriage equality. Gays have not had fire hoses or dogs unleashed on them. They have not been hung from trees or denied basic human rights. Unfortunately, many Black Christians cheered Obama when he made the comparison. A generation ago, they understood the difference between discrimination based on something unchangeable, like skin color, and something as fashionable as sexual orientation. No one ever told gays they could not vote or sit in the front of the bus or drink out of a particular water fountain. Other than maybe Michael Jackson, no Black person ever decided he was not going to be Black anymore. There is, however, one real point of comparison between the gay rights movement and the corrupted civil rights movement, and that is the condition of its victims. In a heartfelt 2015 plea to the gay community, Heather Barwick explained what it was like to be raised by two lesbians after her mother left her father when she was a toddler. It is a strange and confusing thing to walk around with this deep-seated, or this deep-down unquenchable ache for a father, for a man, in a community that says that men are unnecessary, she writes. There were times I felt so angry with my dad for not being there for me, and then times I felt angry with myself for even wanting a father to begin with. There are parts of me that still grieve over that loss today. The anger that children feel upon being abandoned is a universal phenomenon. A lot of us, a lot of your kids are hurting, added Barwick, now a married mother of 4. My father's absence created a huge hole in me, and I ached every day for a dad. Not many men or women are able to shed their anger and voice the truth in the way Barwick has. The alchemists encourage Black people to do just the opposite, ignore the truth and channel their anger toward white America. At Selma, if Obama wanted to address those whose rights were still being violated, he might have mentioned unborn babies. MSNBC's Melissa Harris Perry mentioned the unborn only to celebrate their deaths. The biracial Harris Perry was thrilled to see so many abortion supporters marching in their pink shirts. We saw an enormous contingent of Planned Parenthood go past, she gushed, folks who are clearly out here marching because they believe that reproductive rights continue to be threatened in this country, and particularly in the South. As many as 500,000 Black babies are killed in the womb each year, roughly 3 times the rate of white babies. I mean, that is astounding. That is like horrific. This is a symptom of an ongoing war between men and women, in which women lack confidence that the men will provide for these children once born, and men lack the authority to protect their children's lives in the womb. I mean, yeah, that is a pretty big issue, isn't it? I don't think it's just facing the Black community, but it definitely accounts for a pretty high rate of abortion. And among like the white women I know that have had abortions, that's been pretty much the issue, you know? Hi, baby. I'm so glad you didn't get aborted. You know they abort kittens? I was talking with someone about that recently, saying that they're you can get abortions for your cat. I was like, what the what? Like what? Oh, you're so good, boy. Okay. Okay. Harris Perry thought this borderline genocide worthy of applause, and Obama remained silent. Some Black lives apparently don't matter at all. All right, we're going to stop there at the end of chapter 10. Next reading will be chapter 11. Good reading, huh? We're getting Jesse fleshing it all out. Oof, the antidote. Jesse Jackson. What the hell? Jesse effing Jackson. I remember like my dad had these Doonesbury comics, like a bunch of those books growing up in the house. I used to read them like not over and over, but I read them a few times, enough to get kind of familiarized with certain points. But he had some that had comics in them from like the 1988 presidential election, and the characters were like so upset and conflicted because they couldn't bring themselves to support Jesse Jackson, and they're like, I can't do it, but they're like have all this white guilt and feel like they should. It was like I remember just like it really encaptured like some kind of like funny things I think about liberals. Those comics did. Those were also where I was like first introduced to Donald and Ivana Trump, and I love the way their like romance was depicted in it. I feel sad that they split how they did. I mean, they remained good friends and a good team, but you know, it still wasn't right. But apparently she got involved in business and he became unattracted to her like when he saw her close a deal, like something like that. She started working and like, you know, I don't know. But I just remember reading something about that, like how he had described her becoming more masculine, I guess, and he became like unattracted to her. I feel bad for Tiffany Trump. Yeah, that's true. Aborting cats or stem cells for older cats. Baby, I'm gonna get you some stem cells. What do you think? What do you think? All right. Well, 7:53. Why don't I pull up this video that I was looking at earlier and give it a go? Respond to it. Since we're here, what especially? Yes, what okay, where's my watch later? Oh, dang, people responded to my comments. Adults are not supposed to become exhausted by things. Oh, Lord. I don't know. Is that true? I don't know if I'm a proper adult then. I do become exhausted by things. I'm good at like grinning and bearing it, but the night is young Negro. I know, but I know he'll be around forever. He'll be around forever. He needs a quality grain-free diet. He has a great diet. He has a good diet. He eat good. I ain't the best at everything, but I am good. He eats good. We'll just say that. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this. Okay, give me a sec here as I'm getting this set up. Okay. I hate that it already starts playing, so let me scroll it back to the beginning. Okay. No, CBD does not help with my medical issues. CBD is a joke. CBD doesn't do a damn thing in my experience. I have been told to try out. Why are you asking me that? Who is the manliest? I tried to strike a chord on the Hake report today with what? What did I try to strike a chord with? Yeah, I bet CBD itself is, I think it's a scam, really. I never had any reaction from it. I needed, like, when I was on the sauce, the cannabis, it was THC that, like, was the only thing that actually did anything for pain with me. And I think that's just because for me, it's about movement. I never said that. I did not say that. I never said he was the only alpha. You want me to rank them by manliness? Why should I rank them by manliness? And why is my opinion about them like matter? Their manliness. I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, I don't really feel comfortable doing that, honestly. Shots fired. No shots fired. Listen, okay. Oh, oh yeah, that's true. I said there were no alpha males in chat except for Joelle. That Hey, delighted to be here. Gabe is talking about her dogs. That's why I asked, was you sick? Okay, no, I think my statement stands. My statement stands, okay? I mean, and even you have to look when you're assessing like alpha and beta in males, it's also about like what the ranking is in whatever particular community you're in. So Joelle is at the top of the hierarchy of that chat. That's just facts. Yeah. Why are you all putting Joelle at the end? I mean, I don't know. I don't like, there's no way to, ranking is not, I don't think, appropriate here. Like, stop doxing where people live. think, with Joel, I mean, just to defend him, I do think he has, I don't know, I've kind of, actually with any of them, any man generally, like, I'm trying to learn to suspend judgment about that kind of thing. As a woman, I don't really need to be, I feel, assessing men in that way. Like, it's instinctual, I know it, but I also think that women aren't really being positive when we sit around and judge men for their lack of for what we perceive as a lack of masculinity in them, or what we perceive as beta in them. And so with, like, Joel, for example, like, my relationship with him, just as a sister in Christ and as, like, somebody who, is trying to be supportive to him and encouraging to him, it's not appropriate for me to judge his manliness. Stacy's looking up cryotherapy for me. I have heard good things from people. Am I able to keep cool? How am I? Who is this person texting me? Oh. Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, it's nice when people are, looking after me, but anyway. Anyways. I mean, I think Joel's probably the tallest. He looks like he's the tallest. I would say probably next would probably be Hake, and then Nick or Hake. I don't know which one. They look like they might be similarly sized. I think Nick might be a little bit shorter. I don't know for sure, though. And Fred, I guess, can clarify for us how tall the men are. And then what, Hassan would be shortest. I mean, Hassan looks tiny. He looks small. That's interesting. As soon as they judge, they are deceived. Yeah, I'm trying to suspend judgment of men in that way. I don't think it's fair. I don't want to be judged that way as a woman either. Like, I don't want, maybe I'm, perceived as unfeminine in some way. I don't want someone then, like, from that devaluing me, or like not seeing the full picture of me, or not being, correct with me as a person. I just think it's like, it's one of these things that we do. And I don't want to do this, like, war of the sexes nonsense. Like, I'm really, I mean, I think one of the big things that's drawn me to Bond is, in some sense, a desire to, make up for and be an encouragement to men, instead of, like, be some kind of, destructive harpy like I was in my youth. I'm like, okay, like, actually, like, why don't I come in here and, do the right thing, be the right way, and learn, kind of learn what that is, but also be an encouragement, like, to people who are actually seeking the right way. Frederick, don't notice height. That's fair. What are you talking about, Point Fire? Do you want to clarify what you're meaning by that? Not being a harpy, yes. with my wings and my talons. I mean, Jesse's probably shortest, right? He's like 5'6" or 5'7", I think I read. I mean, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. Like, why are you asking me about what I don't know? And I don't even, I'm not really someone that cares much about height that much. I mean, if somebody is like extremely short or extremely tall, I'm like, it's you notice, but like for me, it's not, I don't know. It's not something that's like that big a deal. So anyway, back to queuing up this video. We got off track talking about gossiping about the Bond boys. Did you all like the idea I had of like getting a tattoo, a tramp stamp across my lower back of the Hake guy, or not the Hake? He'll be in there obviously, but all the Bond guys. It'll be Jesse, then Hake, then Joel, then Nick. As Mount Rushmore. All right, Point Fire. Well, that's some mess. That is some mess. What you're talking about is some mess, and I'm not interested. Imagine what a love child would look like between Freddie and Hot Wheels. I'm sure our child would be very attractive. Thank you, Calvin. I'm not making any ugly babies. Thank you. It don't matter who I'm going to breed with. Like, the baby is going to be cute. Your rude ass. Talking about my hypothetical love child. I'm mad. Okay, let's continue. I hate you, Yoda. Hate you. Oh, okay. I thought it had a different. Okay, well, we'll still watch it. I thought it had a different title. I thought it says, maybe it changed the title. I don't know, but it's Why Modern Man Has Feminine Thinking. And it's some like priest guy or something like that. No, I mean, they take on traits of their white family. That isn't true. Hey, you got to see my family. Those genes are strong. All right. Those genes are strong. My family gets together. It's like, we showed up. Oh, Frederick's like, I said no to something else, Terry, not our baby. We have a beautiful little baby. What are you talking about? Okay.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son,
Oh, I don't have the sound on. Of course. Watch me not know how to do this. I have the like aircon off just because I don't like the sound. So it is still like 90 out, and the sun is out on this west side, beating down on my apartment. Oh, he's asking if I need anything, y'all. Should I tell this guy I need something? I don't know. What do y'all think? My tattoos are visible, or it depends on what I'm wearing, but like, it's not that hard to show people my tattoos. I just have I only have my arms tattooed. I don't have anywhere else tattooed. It's only on my arms. And I won't be having tattoos anywhere else, I don't think. Unless I move to, I could see getting something like maybe like I've thought about like maybe one of my hips or something. But I wouldn't get like anything really on the torso. I don't like torso tattoos. I don't really like those. Like on the back or on the neck or on the chest or the stomach. I don't like those areas tattooed. I hope he would panic. Tell him you need consistency if he's not, or pressure if he's not applying it. I don't know. This guy is, it's, I don't really, we're not compatible, I don't think. And yeah, I'm just, why am I like even telling you all this? I'm just like, I don't know. It's tough. Like, I don't know. I feel I like it. I think I've judged him a bit. I'll say this. I feel like I've judged him a bit, which maybe was not the right thing to do. But at the same time, um, I'm just not really feeling like we're compatible. And he kind of does take a lot of energy from me. And I need a guy that's more chill, you know? I can't be with a guy who's like so just he's very all consuming, you know, and I'm also a very kind of theatrical person, so it's and I don't know, like I just there were things that came up, you know, as we were dating, so I'm just kind of like not but I don't know, I kind of told him like I didn't want to, and we've remained friends and in communication, but it is awkward for me. It's awkward for me because I want to be friendly, and I do want to be friend to him, like I do, sincerely in the right way, but I'm just not. No, he's not my man. He is not my man. We are not dating. We did go on some dates, but Fred says you like the attention. I probably do. That's probably fair. I like attention. I mean, come on. It's fair to say that, but I don't know. He's like, "Do you need anything?" I don't really need anything, nor do I really have energy to see him, you know, especially in this heat as well. I appreciate a man asking me that though. Oh, let it play. Let's see him. No, God, no, Mena, no. No, Mena. You can't run fast enough to play games, Hot Wheels, so tell him there's never a chance of us being together once a week if you're going to keep him around. Then you can ask him for whatever as long as you say that line. Okay, yeah. White boy says he'll kick his ass. Thank you, white boy. I would appreciate that maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I've tried being cold and unfriendly. Yeah. I don't know. He's not I don't think he should be dating right now, honestly. Like just from my assessment of him and where he's at, I just don't think he should be dating either. Like he has money because he like is living very simply, but I don't think he's meeting his potential. And he's also a bit older, and he's one of these, I don't know. I really shouldn't get into it. I shouldn't get into my judgments of him. But also I don't know. He's been divorced, and I don't think I'm comfortable with that right now. Like especially given like the situation. Like there might be a divorced person that I would consider, but I see that today's word is compromise. I see. Hi, King Alpha. I mean, but I'm kind of like leaning towards that it's not a good idea to be with somebody that's divorced. Like I never thought I would come to that conclusion. I always thought I was like really open-minded, Yeah, okay, Bumblebot. That's a good. Yeah, I feel like I don't know. He's yeah. I feel like he needs to be seeking. I don't think. Yeah, he just doesn't need to be. He just strikes me as somebody who needs to be in a relationship. You know, he's like always dating, or like he's always pursuing a woman, or he's always got a woman. You know what I mean? He's like one of those kind of serial monogamous, and that's so opposite of how I live my life. I don't date much. I mean, I shouldn't say I do. I have like no, I don't date much. I mean, maybe once or twice, every couple months. Calvin says he's beta. Yeah, he's needy as hell. He's needy as hell. I don't like that. If he needs to be in a relationship, that just means he has a lot of love to give. Yeah, but it can be really suffocating when you're used to being, independent. And it's not, I do eventually want to have a level of codependence with someone, of course, but like not to the extent where I'm not, and not so quick, not so quick. I don't want to meet someone and then like everything's just getting merged so fast, and that's kind of what happened. Always serving an ungrateful bitch, Calvin says. Are you talking about the man on the screen? No, I'm not. I have never dated a guy that looks like this. I wonder. I'm like, leave me alone for some time. Like, especially like when you first start dating someone, if they want to see you all the time, it's exhausting. It's like, yo, and I'm not a spring chicken, okay? I'm a 38-year-old grown woman with a full time job. I'm disabled. So you have to understand, getting myself together to look presentable and cute and feminine takes more time and energy than it does for someone else. And like anytime I go out, I'm sacrificing a bunch of other things that are self interested I could be doing. So, like, when a man comes into my life and just automatically wants all this time and energy when he hasn't earned it, it's like, it's really off-putting. It's off-putting. Anyway, here I am talking about my love problems, which I don't need to do. It's not a problem, I've got love for this individual and he's being sweet. She's not trying to be tossed around anymore. I don't know that I've been tossed around much, Frederick, but okay. Why did you show his picture and say, ew? I haven't shown his picture. I don't even have a picture of him. I don't even think he's online. Like, I don't think he is. He doesn't like, he's a grown man. He does not do social media and that kind of thing, which is kind of attractive, a guy that doesn't have a social media. Yeah, Calvin. Nobody want to see that. Oh my God. No, this is just some guy whose video I want to respond to. Let's start the video, okay? It's called Why Modern Man Has Feminine Thinking.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. I was speaking with one of my spiritual sons about ideas, about videos, and he said, what about consistent themes that you hear in confession? Is there something that you hear that happens in confession that you would say pertains to a lot of people, things that people are struggling with, et cetera, et cetera? And I realized everyone's confessing very similar things. I mean, you have the 7 deadly sins and all the variations on that. So a lot of confession is I would actually say shaped more by the person or the gender, male or female, who's giving the confession, rather than it is by any particular sins that are kind of dominant. Everyone struggles with the same things. A lot of times the confession, it's how they express it, which led me to share with him this point. What I'm finding or seeing a lot in confession is that a lot of times it's the men that are under 30 over the last few years that I find they actually have very feminine thought processes. This is both what I've experienced in confession and talking with younger men and hearing the way that they think about things. Now, the Holy Fathers tell us don't trust our own thoughts. So it's important that we reveal our thoughts. But in the process of people revealing their thoughts and talking about it, you realize, wow, there is a very strong feminine way of thinking that I think is actually kind of been adopted by this younger generation of men. Now, as I spoke about in a previous video, there's nothing wrong with the way that women think. Women see life through a kaleidoscope of information, mental, emotional, interpersonal. They have great insights. They just need it balanced with a husband or spiritual father that can help them navigate through the pitfalls and find the right conclusion. Likewise, in a marriage, a husband desperately needs the insights from his wife because his wife is going to have very important key insights into the emotional framework, the personality traits of the children, how they need to be communicated to, So the husband and the wife in these two different ways of thinking are completely complementary. There's nothing deficient in women's thinking versus men's thinking, right? Both of them have deficiencies. What I mean is there's a certain way that women process information that is really unique to them, but I'm finding I see it a lot more today in young men. What are those things? Well, number one, the tendency to focus on too many possibilities. Women often suffer from paralysis by analysis. They see so many possibilities of what could happen that they often are unable to navigate through what are less likely scenarios or less beneficial scenarios and more beneficial scenarios. They tend to see a kind of kaleidoscope of information. I see this with men. They start to be unable to kind of differentiate what is valuable information and what is invaluable information, and they begin to kind of take it in almost like a computer where they're just taking an overload of information that they don't know what to do with or even how to process it. Number two, women tend to look for perfect answers. Most women I've encountered are perfectionists. It seems to be something kind of almost inevitable with women. Maybe this is North American women in particular, but they love the idea of making the perfect decision. Again, perfect decisions don't exist, right? We make the best possible decisions with the limited amount of information that we have, and then we move forward. So that's number two. Number three, they make their decisions based on the fear of failure instead of the risk of reward. What is a frequent example of this? Women tend to marry men that are safe. They tend to marry men that are safe because men that are safe don't challenge them. And when they do that, they oftentimes come back afterwards and have feelings of regret about who they married because the person is safe and consistent, but doesn't challenge them, doesn't exhibit much manly characteristics, it isn't very adventurous, and ultimately a lot of times women find these men very boring after a couple of years. What they once thought was safe has then become boring. Men tend to make decisions based on the risk to reward.
Women
This is
being
why we have a
awful.
history of men going to war, sailing the seas, exploring North America, doing all of these things, because men think about the reward and the possibility of what could happen rather than the fear of failing. What I'm seeing with young men today is that there's a type of neuroticism in their thinking where they second
Yeah,
guess
a lot of
themselves
men
all
are
the time.
neurotic.
They see
Yeah.
so many possibilities.
Yeah,
They're
he's like
afraid of
that. This
failing.
guy I was talking
They
about.
don't think of the risk to
neurotic. And
reward
I'm neurotic
ratio.
too. I can't be
They kind of
neurotic.
act in a more timid way about life. They're not going after it. They're not trying to conquer life. Instead, they oftentimes feel that they are being conquered by life. And so when I see this and when I talk to men and they begin to reveal these thoughts and these patterns of thinking, there's a couple things that I know are kind of feeding into this. Number one, life is not a simulation. Life is not a video game. Life is happening in real time and there's no pauses or do-overs. This means that you are going to make perpetual, decisions that are not the best. Why? Because we have that saying, hindsight is 2020. You're constantly making decisions based on limited information. The reality is that when you build confidence based on failure. The most confident people are the people who have failed the most, not the people who've been the most successful. The people who have failed the most have learned from their mistakes and decisions, the things that they would do different, and they continue to build on them. That's one of the hallmarks of being a man, is overcoming adversity and being okay with looking bad, with being a failure, with falling short. You often see this with entrepreneurs and they'll say, oh, I had 4 businesses go bankrupt. I had, 15 great ideas, but I didn't make any money until the 16th. And so it is that you often find that this kind of daring, this fight that has to take place for success and for confidence is a very manly attribute, but it's based on failure. And so if somebody meets a man who's very confident and you hear their story, I guarantee you their story contains lots of failures, lots of missteps, lots of things that they would do different. But in the face of adversity, they'd learn to overcome it. And that's what built their confidence. Because if you think that life is like dominoes and everything's going to fall in your favor and everything's going to work out, you're not going to make it very far. That is not the nature of life and of existence. Number 2, men make decisions today that tell them one thing that is incongruent with their mind. What do I mean by that? Men often look at internet videos of other men being intimate with women that they cannot get. So 2 major problems. Number 1 is they're looking at another man's genitalia. This is bizarre. And every man, I think, knows that this is weird to do that. Number 2, men are looking at women that they can't get. And so the illusion of the internet content is that you're a winner, and yet every man who comes to me when they've committed this sin says, I feel like a failure. So if you make decisions that enforce the fact that you're a loser, that you're a failure, that you're looking at other men, that you can't get women, guess what? This is going to severely undermine your ability to see yourself as the protagonist in the story of your life, making decisions, conquering foes, and overcoming adversity. What you're going to be constantly putting in your mind is, I am a loser, I am pathetic. If you constantly feed yourself with the thought that you are a loser, that you're pathetic, and that you're doing things that you don't want to do, you are never going to have the confidence of a man to make decisions and move forward and trust in God. That's number 3. In an earthly relationship, it is totally necessary for me as a father with my 10-year-old son to get him up in the morning, tell him to brush his teeth, make his bed, clean up his room, wash his face, brush his teeth, do his prayers. That is completely normal, okay? If he is 20 years old and I am calling him up in the morning and saying, son, you've got to get out of bed, you've got to do your prayers, you've got to brush your teeth, that is pathetic, okay? We have a relationship with God the Father where he is our Father and he expects us to act like men. He has a secret, hidden will. We call it the will of God. It is hidden from us. We are not going to figure it out. We are not going to shake a magical jar. all the people who go, oh, I prayed and I felt like God was telling me, is nonsense. When people talk like that, they always say that God agrees with whatever their inclination is. It's like God never tells them to do anything they don't want to do. It's nonsense. Be a mature adult man means living in a relationship with God where you trust in his secret holy will and you constantly are praying for him to bless you and to bless your life. That is what you're asking for. But as far as decision making goes, he expects you to be an adult man. When my son is 25 years old and he says, Dad, what should I do? I can say, listen, son, here is my wisdom. This is what I think. But ultimately, he's got to make the decisions. He's got to figure it out. I'm not going to tell him every time, oh, you must do this or you should do this or whatever else. Right? That's our relationship with God. We have to live and move and act in a way that honors God. What do I mean by that? We need to keep to his moral will, meaning that we're not dishonest. We don't lie. We don't cheat. We don't steal. We don't manipulate people. We're not passive aggressive. We're not pathetic.
Oh, how do
We
you
live
stop
within
that?
his moral will, and then we make the decisions that we need to do in life. Men, young men especially, need to cultivate their thinking around being successful, realizing that life is full of tons of uncertainty. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have failures. They're going to have to trust in God, and they're going to have to walk forward with maturity and follow their best sense and the best advice that they can get from other men, and to follow this through and realize that this is why life is a journey and everything isn't laid out at your feet, ready to go. And you have to fight for it. You have to work for it. And that is part of being a man. God bless you.
Interesting. Okay. Well, interesting conversation in the chat. I've been just watching you all, trying not to laugh and giggle while he was talking. People beefing with Frederick as usual. Fred is so popular. Original King Alpha says, everyone is a Christian until it's time to do what the Bible says. I don't know what you mean by that exactly. Put my comment up so we can see my pic better. Is there a specific comment you want put up or just a comment, Calvin? Terri, straight out of Mario Brothers movie, 1993. Look at them pause. Pause? What do you mean? Okay, he wants to brag about his pic. So he has a silly pic. Of course you don't. Now you're laughing at me. Why are you laughing at me? Why don't you help me instead of laughing at me? Is that Christian to laugh at me? Fred is calling those who are coming for him clout chasing bottom feeders. Fred, you called everyone today. You called Hake, you called Joel, and you called Nick. You gave all of them a piece of your mind. What's it like? Play the video titled The Giving Tree, please. The Giving Tree? You mean like the femicidal story of the desecration of the feminine for the purpose of the masculine? No, I don't think I have. Well, no, I'm thinking, no, I don't think I ever have. I'm not really into Disney that much, to be honest. I could see doing a Snow White. I could see doing something like that. I mean, she was always like the one I resonated with in terms of my beauty. Stacy thinks I could do a Maleficent. I could definitely pull off Maleficent as well. I got enough of that. No, The Giving Tree. Well, isn't that story by Shel Silverstein? What I mean, I'm assuming a bunch of videos will come up. What you need to be more specific. Oh yeah, you look like Snow White. Oh my god. Or the vain old queen. Terry, this is your classroom. Indeed it is. So yes, I'm not sure. With the little red bow. Yeah, I could do the little red bow. Teach us. Oh dear. The Giving Tree. Interesting. Hi. What you want, baby? What you want? What you saying? You don't want me on the computer no more? You want me to pay attention to you? To give you affection? Mm. 104. What's 104? But yeah, never have I dressed up as a Disney character for Halloween. I wonder. Yeah, I guess I could do. I should, if I'm going to do Snow White, I should probably do it at some point soon, right? Got a bunch of like Montgomery Clift things saved. Oh, there was a 10-minute video I saved called The Red Women's Movement. I wanted to watch. Why don't we watch it together? See what it's about. The Red Women's Movement by Polite Leader. I mean, we'll see. It could be really irritating. What about Little Red Corvette? Ever heard of that one? What's the Prince song? Do I use an accessible transportation company in my city? No, it hasn't come up. I mean, I may make an account with them at some point, or one of them. I know I have a neighbor who I don't know exactly what he has. He's a dwarf, but he has another condition as well. So he takes them, but I don't really have any need to. And most of the city is accessible regardless. Like nowhere I really want to go isn't already accessible via like bus or train if I really want to go somewhere, you know. So it hasn't come up for me. Although I can see situations where it would be easier. Interesting question, but yeah, I have not. I have not sought the services of that. But yeah, it's probably a good thing to look into, at least get an account set up if I need. And it might be why is it playing already? I didn't want it to start playing. Excuse me. Get this sorted properly. One moment. I know, well, he's not going outside. That's rude. That's so rude. My Chemical Romance? You think so? Baby, you ain't going outside. Shush. You stuck in here with me. You gotta live with me. You ain't going outside. Boy, who you talking to that way? You ain't going outside.
Today, we're going to be continuing with our series on the women's movement. So let's delve
No, he
in.
didn't.
The interim period between the
It wasn't
female
signed,
enfranchisement campaign
unfortunately.
of the 1910s and the egalitarian movement of the 1960s and 70s is sometimes overlooked. Perhaps one of the more alarming features about this era of female activism is its connection to communism. Most of you are likely
Yeah.
familiar with Karl Marx, who, along with his friend Friedrich Engels, co authored the Communist Manifesto. The title has had far reaching consequences for the world, most of which have been largely negative. People are familiar with the horrific communist regimes of the former Soviet Union, North Korea, China, and other nations. What is less known about Marxist ideology
I
is
disavow
the
his
influence
statements.
it has had on egalitarian thought. A little background. According to Marx, the problem in society was largely caused by the business owners, or what he called the bourgeoisie, aka the middle class. Marx felt that the production of
Bourgeoisie is
labor
not the
was
middle
controlled
class.
by
You
middle
just said
class
the
capitalists.
bourgeoisie is the middle
The capitalists
class. What
used
the
this control.
fuck? Like, oh God. Like, I want to listen to these guys, and then I just like, you hear something so stupid as that, and you're just like, oh my God. Ugh. Why? What look do I consider hot, Calvin? What look is that you're referring to? Please get my classroom under control. I can't control these classes. My class, I remember, God, I remember this one time in high school. I don't know why I was in my French teacher's class. You know what I think it was? I don't even think it was. So I took 2 years of French, and I was actually in my second year French teacher's class. And for some reason, uh, for some reason, it was like the period where, or it was in between classes or something. But for some reason, I remember that I was kind of like alone in the class, or there weren't many of us that I can remember. Like the class wasn't full. Hey, I'm telling a story. Why do you come over here and help me? Are you going over there and you yell, but you ain't going outside? So I don't know what you think you're going to get out of that. That's right. Excuse me. Um. So no, bourgeoisie does not mean middle class. It means ruling class. It means the capitalist class. The middle class is not generally, I mean, middle class is a pretty meaningless term in America. Most people who are middle class, I mean, that would be capitalists specifically, would be like small business owners or that kind of thing, but they would be petty bourgeois, or, they would not be considered to be ruling class. They wouldn't be considered to be bourgeoisie. They may have those kind of values, but they're not considered to be the actual ruling class. Point Fire wants me to get in an accessible pool. I would like to get into a pool sometime. It's been a long time. I never had a spiky green mohawk, especially not, I never had a mohawk. Oh, you're living in your imagination, Nina. A mohawk? Get real. Ugh. Like, and don't get me wrong, I had some bad haircuts. Don't get me wrong. But like a freaking mohawk. I did have a nose ring. I got my nose pierced when I was 15 for my birthday. I had a little stud in the nose. It's technically still pierced. I just stopped wearing it a few years ago because I didn't like the look of it anymore. I felt like it kind of, I don't know. I just felt like it detracted. I thought I looked better without it, so I stopped wearing it. Thankfully, it hasn't really left much of a mark on my nose. Mena is really in her imagination. That is, I've never done that either. Wow. Mena, I was a femme. I was a femme. Now I wore a sports bra, but I did not in any sense like get up to whatever you're imagining. Calvin is calling my bowl cut a Spock haircut. That's funny. Yeah, I can't with this nonsense. I don't want to watch it. Stop sharing. Morons. Ugh. Can't deal with it. It seems like he's done a lot of videos against feminism, so I thought maybe this would be interesting, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, this is just more propaganda stuff. It's not really that interesting. What kind of grades did I make in high school? I mean, it depended on the subject. I don't know. Like, think I had like about a 3.0, all things together. Like, they were kind of, there were some classes where I did that. Like, there were classes where I got like straight A's no matter what. And then there were classes where I was more of like a struggling C student, sometimes bordering on like a D. So yeah, I did struggle with math quite a bit. So I usually would I think there were a couple times I got into like the B's where I was like, yes. But really that was just due to like extra credit and like, I think, doing enough work to get by really, but I never really understood math until I got tutored as an adult. Once I got the tutoring and I was really sick in my childhood. Like my fourth grade year, especially, I really had, I was just sick a lot that year. I remember like puking in the nurse's office and it staining the carpet. Gross. But yeah, I remember I missed a lot with math at that point, like third and fourth grade. I think I was kind of sick too in the third grade. So, yeah, I ended up missing some kind of fundamental things that held me back especially when I got to high school. So yeah, math is a lot easier now, but the chat is going faster than I can even catch. What the heck? I'm not wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt. Oh my God. How do you believe and throw away such a deep point of view? Are you asking me? Like, she knows she was conned, Freddie, but it still hurts to admit. I mean, conned by what? I conned myself. Nobody brainwashed me, honey, other than the devil. Like, I brainwashed myself. It's not like anybody was feeding the stuff to me. It was like a personal interest that I took and that I took way too far. Nobody else is to blame. I wasn't conned other than the fact that I listened to the devil. I mean, that's all I can really say. Like, we'll see Sunday, right? I don't know what that means. Are you talking about me, Frederick? I think she's a double agent trying to land a conservative to simp on her. Fred, I've always had conservatives simping on me, okay? Since I was a little petite Marxist, young 20-something girl here on YouTube. Most of my followers at that time were right-wing fanboys with horrific. I remember just being like horrified that I had so many conservative, like right-winger guys following me and wanting to discuss the labor theory of value with me. I was like, look at them. No. Of course, in time, I learned about leftist men and, all their femininity, but y'all are crazy. They're just crying about you. Okay. You weren't talking about me there with the. Oh, yeah. It can be interesting. It can be interesting a bit. I don't really study it much. I mean, I use it periodically with like work or just other things, it's practical. It's a practical thing to know. But I did struggle with it in school, especially high school, and I never really got figured out until I actually sat down and got tutored one-on-one with someone who kind of picked up where I was lacking in my math knowledge. So yeah, I mean, yeah, 3.0 kind of average. Interesting, Stacey. Question. I don't know, like. See that she said she was conned but can't them because she can't emotionally. I don't know what she's saying. Mayna's kind of a pothead, so maybe she'll clarify, maybe she won't. That too. That yeah. I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. I think that had a lot to do with it. I mean, yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting, like, too. It's always like the biggest normies, too, that are into that. Like, they're so normal, like, I don't know. I don't know how to describe. And then they're just like drawn to it. I mean, there is something beautiful, though, about the dark feminine, isn't there? It's theatrical, it's exciting, it's dangerous. There's something I think that is alluring about it. And just, I mean, obviously we all have different kind of features and traits and style. So yeah. Well, I've unfortunately that never happened for them, Calvin. Unfortunately. I mean, there was one guy that did court me who was kind of right wing, and we did have a friendship that endured a long time, and we're still friends, but it just wasn't meant to be. I think there were some differences in for different reasons, and I was kind of like angry as well, and he was rather kind of timid in a lot of ways, so he couldn't deal with my hell, really. um But yeah, it's more just subscribers and people commenting, not like just be evil, not emo. My drawing, I mean, it's the one I've been working on. Ow, 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 ow. My hands. I still have that comment up, y'all. Sorry. It's this one that I've been working on forever. I haven't started any new pieces. I'm just kind of still slowly filling it in. You can see there's a little bit of white left. I don't want there really to be any. So, I mean, I don't know that I don't want there to be any, but I'm filling it in as best I can. Oh no, I like it. This has been one I've struggled with, and parts of me wish I didn't make it so elaborate. Honestly, I wish I'd been more simplistic with it. But I have to say, it's come together and it has won me over in some ways. Like, I'm no longer feeling how I was about it for a while. I've kind of taken back control of it, I guess, and I'm feeling good about where it's at. Super duper adorable. Can I have it? No, I have somebody offering to buy it. So no, you cannot have it unless you want to outbid him. I already have an offer on it. So sell it to a simp. The person I'd be selling it to isn't a simp. Not yet, anyway. We'll see what the future holds. But yeah, for now, no. Gosh, I shouldn't have had that coffee so late. I'm feeling kind of alert now, but I don't want to. It obviously is a simp. I don't think so. Somebody who invests in art. Oh, Mr. Mad said he wanted to purchase it. So I think we should reserve it for him. He may not want it anymore. Maybe he won't like it. Then we can see who does want it. But yes, he was, Calvin. He was in here earlier. I responded to one of his comments. Oh, I do declare this heat is something. Yeah, I think Mr. Matt invests in art, so I want to get it done up for him. But yeah, it's not done. Mad with that pink ass picture. I think it is an interesting picture. It is interesting. I don't know that it's not like my favorite piece, but I think he wants one that I was working on, like when we met. So, did you lose me on the Nick call? I don't even remember what your call was on Nick today. To be honest, Fred, I can't bring it up in my mind. I know you called Hake, Joel, and Nick, but I don't remember any of your calls. I think I responded to one of them. I thought it was funny in the chat. But I don't remember what you were talking about. Refresh our minds. He just wants to be a weirdo buying it. I don't know. Like, well, sorry, honey, money talks. Yeah. Is there a reason that went in that direction? What direction? What do you mean delighted to be here? Oh, right. AA and addiction. That's right. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, there were a couple of calls that were interesting. I'm trying to think of, yeah, I think you were kind of being on the side of AA and people using 12-step programs to, get themselves together. I mean, it's really whatever works, I think, in that circumstance. It's not something that I've struggled with, to that degree. So, I haven't struggled with alcoholism at all. So I can't really say, but I do know that alcoholism destroys people, and it's very insidious, and it's very easy for people to get caught up in. And because drinking is so common and ubiquitous, especially like living up north too, like in Alaska, the drinking is off the chain. It's like insane how people drink, and it's a lot of it has to do with the dark and the cold. People just drink a lot. I mean, people drink a lot everywhere, so I probably am generalizing, but it's there's not much else to do as well. It's that coupled with not much else to do, and it's similar here. Like there's a big drinking culture here, and I just I've known a lot of people that have struggled with that drinking, and it starts socially, and then it ends up like consuming their whole lives. Well, no, I think forgiveness is just a step in the direction of, bettering yourself anyway. Forgiving your mother and father, forgiving your mother, forgiving your father, returning to the Father. That's just part of the formula. It's not everything. You also have to stay present. You have to take every day as it comes. And me, I get in my imagination a lot, Yeah, it's in there to forgive everyone. Well, that's a good message in the 12 steps. I'm not really familiar with the 12 steps. I'm not familiar with the program at all. But I just don't, like, if that's what somebody is doing to try to help themselves, then that's, I don't think it needs to be, we don't need to judge it or like judge people. I do sometimes wonder when people have been sober for years that they still identify as like having a disease or being like an alcoholic or a drug addict, like even though they haven't used for years, they still have that identity. And I think that's kind of weird. I do wonder about that. Like, why do you still so strongly identify with it? And I have seen people who do build an identity out of their sobriety as well. But I mean, it is an accomplishment. It is an accomplishment if you have struggled to remain sober. So I also don't want to be like judging people who are, talking about like their sobriety. I mean, I follow Kat Von D on Instagram, I think, or maybe it was Facebook. I saw her. I think I follow her both places, but like she posted yesterday or recently anyway that she hit her 17 years, or she'd been sober for 17 years, which is like, that's pretty cool. Stacy says addiction doesn't leave, it's just dormant. Is it addiction though? I don't know with alcoholics that it's just addiction, because there's like I believe in game theory to a certain degree, and that alcoholic is actually a game that people play. Do you remember me reading the book Games People Play by Eric Bernay? I was reading about like some marital games in it, but I have been on here before reading about Alcoholic, specifically the game of Alcoholic and how people play it. It was a while ago, so I don't know if it's still posted or not. But the book has this like really intense breakdown of it has this intense breakdown of like the dynamics and like the games that, you know, the roles, like the different players in the game, you know, like Patsy and you know, people, the Patsy is the one who like enables the alcoholic to drink, like the friendly, helpful person that enables them. And then there's all these other weird games. So, like, for example, an alcoholic will ask somebody if they want a drink as an excuse for themselves to start drinking, you know? Just little things like that. But then there's also like the victim, the intense self-pity and victimhood of the alcoholic and the need to be rescued, which is a big part of that dynamic. So Original King Alpha is calling me Agent Clarice Starling. Shouldn't you be working on that stack of cases you've got to solve, or are you just going to sit there fanning, waiting for someone to paint a portrait of you? Good God. I can't imagine being Agent Clarice Starling. I'm done working for today, Original King Alpha. I will log back in tomorrow, but today I am done. I served my sentence. Oh dear. It's a manipulative disease, says Fred. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, he hasn't been arrested in over a decade. I've never been arrested. I don't think I would enjoy it. I think I might cry if I was arrested. Hopefully, I would cry beforehand and get out of it entirely, but you never know. But I try not to do anything that will, you know, get me arrested anyway. So, well, you know, y'all, it is bedtime for me, so I need to get going. I'm actually up past my bedtime, but it was fun, you know. Some of it wasn't, but you know, reading from the antidote definitely was good, and you know, chat was good too. So I hope you all have a good night, and I'll see you when I see you next. Bye.